So these days, I tell a lot of people that I'm working with a personal assistant, and basically what I do is just go to ChatGPT, open Sora, have a conversation with Sora, and ask it to do my tasks for me. And literally, that's what I've been doing. Like yesterday, I finished two meetings. I had a bunch of tasks to do. I just said, you know what? I'm going to take 10 minutes, go to my personal assistant, and we'll work on this. I gave it all the updates from the meetings and he executed the tasks for me. And all I needed to do was to copy, send it to whoever assigned me the task and say, read through and let me know if I can proceed with it. Just, oh, great, great, well done. But that was all AI and ChatGPT basically doing my work for me. And I remember sitting in the office one evening with headphones on and just watching Google's IO 2025 keynote being played because of the hype that was being generated around it on LinkedIn. And all through, one statement was on repeat that Gemini is more than a chatbot now. It's more like your personal, helpful assistant to tackle complex tasks and take actions even on your behalf. And I think that was the very first time, or the week prior, was the very first time I started hearing the conversations around AI agents. And I'm like, is it football agents or what are we talking about? Because it sounded like a new term that was now being consistently shown to me by whatever algorithms there were. And the thrill that I got to see that, oh, this is AI that can really do a lot of things independently, but also brought an unease around. Like, okay, then what's my function in the workplace? Because now it's like I could literally automate every single thing, and it's never been easier. Because usually, when you wanted to automate stuff, you needed a big IT department or a big operations department where they spend weeks building a dashboard and all that. And now AI could make those things very easy and very accessible for people. So the question that we want to ask in this episode is, what does it really mean for us when machines can do our thinking and then we have very little of that to do? McKinsey predicts that up to 30% of today's work hours could be automated by 2030. And we are in the middle of that shift. So AI agents are quietly reshaping everything. They are reshaping our jobs, our learning, our relationships, even our sense of happiness and purpose. And on this episode, I have Brain, who has been on the podcast before to help us dissect DeepSeek when it broke onto the scene. And we published the episode in two ways. In I think as a combination, it had over 30K views. You know, one thing that I really liked, someone went to watch all our episodes and came back and said after they watched the DeepSeek episode, they figured out what we wanted to do really on the podcast. And it was like that was the reflection of the standard kind of conversations that they wanted to hear. So it's really nice to have you back, Ray, and welcome back to the
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah. Um, First, let me ask, how has the buzz been after the Google announcements of exactly what Gemini could do, the integration of AI agents, um, and more like doubling down on the AI development aspect of their product? How has the buzz been in the tech world, and how excited are people about it?
So generally, I think it's been two ways. It depends on where you're looking at
Yeah,
it from, right? I think probably from like the consumer front, it's a very big thing,
yeah,
right? Because these are a lot of things that people have dreamt to be able to do, but they are probably trying like maybe restricted by resources or ability,
right.
like the skill. But then also in the developer space, as in like people that are trying to build startups and stuff like that, are also now probably in danger. I don't know.
Yeah,
Because I remember during the DeepSeek episode, I made mention of something like the startups don't know whether like they wake up one day
somebody
and
has
their
done their product.
entire
Yeah,
startup has been a feature in like Google's like release or something. And that's what we saw, right? So for example, the trying on
yeah,
clothes thing, that was like two or three startups
yeah.
and that has completely been taken over by Google. Right. So it's both of excitement and um people are scared, but I mean it's the way that's how the space is, right? Because of the fast paced nature, you probably still find something to hop on to then at some point in time. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing I heard that was funny because when I heard the announcement. Someone said, well, I watched a video where somebody was breaking down the features, and the opening of that video was Google just shut down hundreds of startups with its new series of AI integration.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, even the feature on Google Meet where they are like you can speak in one language and it directly translates
Mhm.
into another language. That's obviously something that startups have been exploring to try and do to create more accessibility and
Yeah.
break down language barriers. Now all those noble goals are gone. Mainly because because Google has the infrastructure, right? Like they have a majority of the tools that people use.
Mhm.
So the integration of it makes it even better for them. Like personalized email responses. I don't have to go and integrate another AI platform or something. It's now Gemini, which is a Google product, which is much easier for that integration to work. And do you think this is deepening what people would start to term as the monopoly of Google? Because we've seen them as a search engine for so long. And even then, they've really dominated that space. And so, when it comes to information, infrastructure, and the way in which they've managed to create a product that people just depend on with Google Drive, Google Photos, email, um, so many other things, Google Docs, Google presentations, whatever it is. Now, instead of me going to generate a video somewhere, I can just go to Google Presentations, type in a prompt, and it generates the video for me using Geo. And so, is this deepening the hold that Google has had? And is it smart play, or is it eventually going to catch up on us as one of the worst economic decisions that we've allowed to happen?
I, I I wouldn't say it's deepening their monopoly. I think it depends on how exactly you want to
Yeah,
term like the monopoly aspects, right? Because you have to understand the tech ecosystem is very broad, right? It's very huge. And for me, if Google was say monopolizing the search engine market,
yeah,
right? Then I'll be like, yeah, like this is what you are doing. But then you see that it's a spread
yeah,
across various industries. I mean, people can say, well, it's still tied to that one main entity. But I think once they are not stifling any sort of innovation or growth, like moving forward, then I feel like it's not necessarily like deepening their monopoly, because understand that they were I think DeepMind was already doing like AI research way before OpenAI came into play,
yeah.
right? But OpenAI still ended up being like one of like the forerunners, right? So it meant that I don't know the word to use to describe it, but that hold that people assume Google has just because they are Google doesn't necessarily exist. Because even in like the model spaces, right? Like the AI model spaces, for example, there's a lot of competition from OpenAI, Anthropic, and so it's not just a Google thing now, right? It's for everybody, right? Anybody can come into play, and your innovation is basically going to determine how much market you're able to control,
Okay.
right?
So it's more of the quality of the innovation and not just the existence of the innovation itself.
Yeah, yeah,
But you
yeah.
see, in a world where Google has the money and the resources, there's also a rare case to be made that they are just unlikely to make a very shitty product, right? Like the degree to which their quality would be is like by default is likely to be good because they have the money to pump it into it. And we've seen this case that I'm talking about, this accusation being leveraged against Meta in terms of monopolies. So Meta sees Snapchat comes up and it's a video status, whatever it is, Instagram, okay, stories, Facebook, whatever it is. It even integrates into Facebook Messenger as well. And
Hmm.
people have
Yeah,
accused Zuckerberg of doing that all the time. But anytime there is a feature on a competing social media platform and he can't buy them, he just goes ahead and adds it as a new feature in the next update, right?
right.
And so he's creating the environment to, even if he's not actively harming the other guy, he's just giving consumers very little reason to turn and look to see whatever is there. right? He wants to create an ecosystem of convenience, which seems to be what Google is doing. Because if I'm working on Google Doc now, I don't need to go to ChatGPT and go and prompt and ask something, copy and then come and paste. I could just open a Gemini tab on the side and do it in there and complete my task. Same with Gmail and all that. And so it's like the monopoly, I don't think, is coming from them actively saying, hey, you don't do it, or we are buying you out or something. It's that because of the money and because of the extent of convenience they are creating with AI integration, it's very unlikely that people would go. I know someone, David Ejim, who doesn't see the essence in paying for ChatGPT just because it feels more convenient and he understands that these big companies are going to integrate AI into their workflows. So there's no need to go to alternative AIs. And that's the kind of people that Gemini is creating right now.
Yeah. So I think first of all, right, I think the Facebook example, right, like or the Meta
Yeah,
example, right, for me it just feels a bit different, right, because Zuckerberg was literally right. It's like the literal space where he was doing all those things was social media platform,
yeah,
right? So they literally did the same thing, like messaging, like
yeah.
connectivity, what have you, and he just like did that. So I don't really like equating like the
Okay.
two, right? But then again, the reason why I was still like side with Google was like when you take like the Microsoft when Microsoft started, when
Yeah,
Microsoft came out with Windows and whatever, it came up with like the Windows came with its own web browser, right?
yeah,
But then Google built a better web browser,
yeah.
right? Like with Chrome, right? So there's like this meme where like there was the first thing you do when you get a new Windows laptop, you download Chrome,
Even
right?
now, when you
So
get a
it's
Mac,
like
you still download.
yeah, exactly. So it's more on who is building the
Yeah,
better product. Yes, they might have resources that allow them to be able to make the experience easier for people, and that's also something I give into the fact that that's something we need to look into, right? So then the question becomes like, what are the safety nets that are being
yeah,
put in place for these companies that are powerhouses
yeah.
basically, right? But then the thing is within the space, right, we've seen that like no company is necessarily too big to not fail,
Yeah.
right? Um, companies can still fail. So in as much as yeah, they do have some level of like power, I still feel like they're not safeguarded in any way
Yeah.
whatsoever. But yeah, we need to check them.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's true. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Because when you're answering the question, I'm also like, so do I want competition for competition's sake? Or what exactly, exactly am I looking for?
exactly.
So, but they are doing quite a good job. And this conversation is going to border mainly on a few areas. We'll try and cover them, and hopefully, we can give listeners more areas to think about. So, first, let's start with work and purpose, right? And in this section, I just want to generally you and people to think about moments when you felt most alive at work. I have done that solving the hardest problems at midnight, pushing through challenges, and like coming at the end feeling very proud that I did this one. Like this was me, genius. now, now imagine an AI assistant working alongside you, handling your spreadsheet, drafting your reports, optimizing your calendar, and it feels like great. You have a partner who is with you all the time, but it also begs the question if a machine can do so much of our job, then what's left of us? And so the first question I want to ask under this is we often discuss AI taking over tasks, but is AI also taking over our purpose in this conversation? Because how do you find meaning when a machine can handle majority of your work? And does AI integration liberate us or gradually make us feel more obsolete within the working environment?
So I think there's kind of like a shift right now into I think generally right people are now asking themselves, do I gain purpose from the work I'm doing, right? It's is the work I'm doing what drives my purpose, right? And I think a lot of people might come to the realization that I'm only doing this thing out of survival, right? So, so I only go to work out of survival.
I
Like
asked the
I feel like that's
colleague,
where a lot of people.
why are you working? He said, for the money.
I feel like a lot of people do these things out of
Yeah,
survival, right? But even if that's not what you, even if you're like you genuinely get purpose from your work, right? Then the question then becomes, how best are you going to get the most purpose, like achieve the most utility for that purpose? Is it by doing a lot of grant work where you constantly ask yourself, how am I going to ensure that I do this? As opposed to thinking about what you want to do and then just imagine it and then allow finding a way for it to come for it to come to being. Because then it means that once you've been able to achieve that end result, then you can constantly gain more
yeah,
utility in terms of purpose for that work, right? So I feel like yes, there might be people that might feel like their work might turn out obsolete because the truth is, and with every technological advancement, there's things that might necessarily phase out, right? So there's always going to be like evolution within the space. So let's say like for research for example, right, a lot of researchers might have to sift through like a vast majority of
yeah,
data, trying to uncover insights, trying to find gaps in research, all of those things. Those are grant. That's like literal grant
yeah,
work, right? Like having to like read through dozens of research papers and whatnot. Once you have the ability to do that at like the click of a button, it leaves a lot of space and a lot of time for you to actually think about the kinds of questions you want to answer and the kind of answers you want to
yeah,
give, right? So I feel like in as much as it is like it might pose a threat to certain people, if you identify that the work I'm doing might become obsolete, then it's better you find a way to reskill yourself and then like pivot, right?
yeah. So, I mean, there are two questions I had off the back of this.
Mhm.
And the first one is, I personally know that, for instance, I am a debate coach. I could just pass on documents to AI, read through and give me the areas that support this argument. But I also know that when I read something, almost every single line has insight that it gives me that AI might not pick. Mainly because of my experience, my background, also because I just know how to use very little information and make it relevant to whatever I'm talking about. So, is there an element of quality that humans doing the actual work comes with that transferring it to AI, even if it reduces the effort on the human part, then tends to drop in quality? Because usually when we perceive AI being involved in our work, there's an automatic assumption that by default, that's more quality work. Maybe that's more efficient work. I'm not sure if it's always more quality work for people.
So I don't think it's always more quality
Yeah,
work, right? Because there's a lot of garbage out, right? There's a lot of garbage out there that's like there's a lot of garbage out there that becomes data on the internet,
yeah,
right? It's basically trying to say, hey, I'm searching for something on the internet and you search for it and you get a ton of results on Google, right?
yeah,
You would be the best person to be able to find out the best information that best suits what you need,
yeah,
right? Think about blankets, large language models, or like AI now is for a lot of them, or for most of them that are trained on vast majority of data, there's still a lot of garbage in the
yeah,
kind of data that they are being trained on, right? So we still need a human in the loop to try to ensure that okay, whatever is coming out is what I need, right? Because once they are not hitting 100% on like
yeah.
benchmarks, then it means
There's
there's
quality.
like there's something that it's is missing. Yeah, there's quality that's missing, right? Even in terms of like length and duration, like I think like agents now like coherently can't go past like a certain time limit,
Yeah,
right? So it still means that there's still like the need for like a human in the loop, basically as oversight, as basically as to safeguard the kind of
yeah,
information, right? So, for example, you take image generation and image generation. When an AI when AI image is generated, you would know of the bugs that this is generated, right? And you know this from basic human like
yeah,
human perception, right? So it then means that the work what we are getting out of AI is good, It's quick, it's efficient, but it's not the best. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
the best we've
Yeah.
seen. It's just the best with the data that is available now
Yeah.
publicly,
Okay.
right here.
Okay. The second question I had on this was Simon Sinek had an episode on AI, and he was basically ranting about the fact that the integration of AI and the active encouragement of AI use is reducing the learning process. And this is not even in education, but I'm talking about work. That the constant mistakes and imperfection in trying to execute a task itself is the most valuable part of the experience, because those are things that give you unique human attributes that just having to jump to the end results does not give you. And don't even think about this in the form of us who are here now, who, whether or not we use AI now, we still had several bags of experience where we've had to do very stupid tasks, as hard as it may be, like reading through 100 pages and doing all that. Think about it more like kids who are being born now, who would grow into an
Yeah.
AI active world where they don't have to do it. It's not like they don't have to do the hard work. They just have to pick a phone and pick it
Think it's
and think it and just send it to ChatGPT to execute it for them. And I'm wondering, and even I myself, like yesterday, I finished, like I said, two meetings. I was confused about how to draft. I was supposed to create a feedback form. I was a bit confused about how exactly do I do this. Just had a chat with Sora, and he went ahead and crafted a, oh yeah, this. So I loved the process of having to rack my brain around it. It was efficient. It was nice, but is he onto something there? And if you think about it from the perspective of people who are now to be born in the next 3 to 5 years, even people who are being born now, is that going to offer them a life where they entirely miss out on the process in achieving a lot of the things that they'll be working on?
this is a very tough question, right? Because I think I do get that sentiment,
Yeah,
right? Because the more you try to look for things, the more like the problem imprints on your
yeah,
mind, the more the solutions you've tried imprints on your mind. So you know what works and what doesn't work. You know why what works and why it
exactly.
doesn't work, right? But then it also means that we should probably find a new framework to approaching problem solving,
Okay.
right? Because what we know as problem solving is identifying the problem, finding the multiple solutions that might work, finding ruling out what doesn't work,
Yeah,
right? But if we look at it and reimagine it from the point of I have a problem, how do I solve it? Why am I solving it this way? Right? I think from those aspects, right, we can also learn quickly, like more quickly,
yeah,
right? As opposed to doing all the unnecessary like sifting through and then finding the one, right? Because the truth is, if we don't do it, someone is going to do
yeah,
it. And this is in a purely work
yeah,
scenario, right? If you don't do it, someone is going to do it,
yeah,
right? The onus is on you to do it and understand why it's being done that way.
yeah,
Do you get it? So it's going to differentiate you
yeah,
from whoever did it blanketly and then
yeah,
yourself. So I feel like in as much as yeah, we might be taking away that option for them to learn through that process, we are probably going to reimagine a new process of approaching problems and how we are going to necessarily solve them.
yeah. That's true. I mean, I'm training my kids for the U.S. Nationals, and I'm basically in that process rethinking how I train them just with the introduction of AI. Because obviously, it's not worth it to assign them to be reading, to be researching on evidence for one argument when I could just use search and put in the logic and you'll find the answer much more relevant, much more quickly. And so I'm now rethinking also, how do I utilize them? How do I make them feel responsible for what they are putting out without having them do the unnecessary manual labor that it comes with, and how they integrate AI into the work, which is quite a tough sort of thing to navigate, because now it's like you want them to do the work without actually doing the work, but you want them to sit
Yeah.
and feel like they did the work. So, Yeah. I mean, the final question I wanted to ask here is that if especially when it comes to creativity, some say that AI will enhance creative work rather than replace it, like design and all that. Like I asked AI to, I finished generating some program outline and I asked it to just do a random design on, and it came up with something that maybe 5 years ago would have been considered a very good graphic of an announcement of that program. And I'm wondering, where does this leave everyone else? Even if we are saying it can't replace it, because if first of all, majority of your creative work is being done by AI, then what part of it belongs to you? Like, what is your share in the creative process?
So I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I think a couple of days ago,
Yeah,
I saw a tweet where the person was talking about English language being like the test of
yeah,
intelligence, blah blah blah, because of LLMs and stuff like that. And my response was necessarily, it's not necessarily the language, it's the
yeah,
expression, right? So I think creativity in itself is expression, right? How best you're able to express
yeah.
yourself. People know how to express themselves, but don't have the requisite skills to express themselves meaningfully.
Oh, okay.
So take designing for example. You know what you want, like you when you envision what you
Yeah,
want, you know
but you
what it looks
struggle to
like, you
get
know the
there.
feel you are going for. Exactly. You know the theme you are going for. You know what you want it to look
Yeah,
like. But the problem is you don't know how to get into Photoshop or Illustrator and
yeah,
then achieve that design, right? Or you want to take a picture. You know what you want the picture to look like, but you don't know how to operate a
yeah,
camera or take a video or whatever, right? So, but you still know how to express what you
yeah.
want, right? So that expression in itself can be the next form we see creativity.
Oh,
So then it means we don't just limit to the people that know how to use the tools, but then it's now a focus on the people that are actually expressing themselves more,
yeah,
right? So if you want like an essay, and you want the essay to sound in a particular way, you are able to express yourself very well to be able to get that
yeah,
result. The only problem now is because a lot of the models that are coming out are English language focused, then the question is how do we get people that don't speak English natively
oh,
to be able to express
yeah,
themselves, right? And I think Google did a very good job with that, right? So I think with one of the IO
yeah,
announcements, I think they had a feature where it could it could take like context
yeah,
as you
yeah,
speak, like
yeah,
live, right? So it could take a Jamaican accent, an Indian accent, switch into like Hindu, it will
yeah,
understand. I think that's what we need to be like shifting towards, right? Encouraging people to be more expressive and then allowing them to show their creativity through that expression.
yeah. For me, like the language thing is really true because I'm thinking about, for instance, I do the Doha Debates Ambassadors program. Every year there are people from different backgrounds, and language
Yeah.
barrier is one of the things for people to meaningfully engage with the program. And I'm thinking, if I can speak in my most comfortable language and you can understand it in your most comfortable language,
Yeah.
while it's live, you don't have to go and look for a transcript and then go and translate the transcript.
Yeah.
Now, repeating what I'm saying, that's like really huge breakthrough in terms of access.
Mhm.
And it's similar to what you're
Yeah.
saying, accessing the creativity space and being able to express yourself
Mhm.
itself is a big thing.
And I also think even in terms of like thinking, basically like thinking and problem solving,
Yeah,
right? So I have like if you like some Ethiopian colleagues, right? And you know in Ethiopia they speak Amharic a lot,
yeah,
right? Not
yeah,
English. So we have a conversation and like even in like telling the time is different in
yeah,
Ethiopia and basically like they speak in
yeah,
Amharic, right? So I asked them, so how do they
yeah,
think? So when they're in class, how do they
yeah.
think? Like I think in Amharic, right? I don't
True.
think in English,
It's
right?
true.
Like I think in
Yeah,
Amharic. So it's now we allow people to voice out. So we should be moving to a phase where we allow people to voice out what they want to
yeah.
voice out from how they
That's
think,
very
right? So if
true.
I think in Chi, I should be able to express myself in Chi and then get it
Yeah,
to
I mean,
work.
I even think of the debate space, right, and online debating, and I remember my interview with Tim Pulich, who said he his biggest challenge in debate is he thinks in his native language, and when he's speaking, he now has to be doing live translation, literally, like what Gemini is coming to do now. He has to be doing that in his mind,
Yeah.
speaking it as he's going, right? And that's what a lot of ESL speakers face. We don't think in English. We think in languages that are more comfortable to us. And
Yeah.
we have to sort of be transcribing and translating
Mhm.
while we are speaking and delivering our speeches. And I'm wondering, like, imagine an online competition where he could speak in his language. I know, for instance, Israeli
Mhm.
debaters debate in Israel in Hebrew and Israeli languages in their internal competitions.
Oh, okay.
And if they are speaking like that on online, and they are comfortable to deliver their speeches that way, and we could also listen to it in English, that levels up the competitive field, because now they don't have to be doing that 3 megabyte per second translation in their every single
Right.
time, while the English native just does straight straight out,
That's, yeah.
right? And so it could change a
Yeah.
lot around integration and access for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about education here, and I'm tying education to identity because for most of us, I think the biggest part of our lives that shapes who we become, the characters that we take on, the kind of things we prioritize, boil down to our education. Even more so now, when parents are busy, when work culture is the norm of the day, and children spend almost all their time. I teach students who come to school around 7 a.m. and leave around 6 p.m. because they close school at 3 and they have extracurricular activities from 3:30 something till 6 before their parents come for them every single day. So this is a child who is spending almost their entire existence
At
in
time.
school. Worst of it
Yeah.
all, on Saturday, they have some other things to do, which is school related and development and programs. Maybe the only day they get off the hook is probably on a Sunday, which is usually day for homeworks before you get on to school on Monday. So school has become a very big part of shaping people's identity, or education to be more specific. And today's students face a world where AI can write their essays, solve their math problems, and even debate assignments, right? I I'm very reluctant to give my students debate assignments until I've really thought it through, because they could just upload the document and in 2 seconds they have an answer back. And classrooms are now obviously becoming more like the labs for Gemini and other AI platforms. But if an AI can do the thinking that we do to truly learn, how do we form our identities as learners? Because now we are not producing anything unique or peculiar to ourselves.
I think for forming identity as learners,
Yeah,
right? That basically, I think that basically stems from how exactly you're able to pick up from whatever is being taught in the environment in which you are in, right? So what it means, or what it looks like, is we are in a classroom setting and there's one syllabus that is being
yeah,
followed, one standard by which is being taught. You have to follow through, right? So you begin to pick up your identity from how you understand the
yeah,
topic, and or how you approach understanding the topic, right? The problem I see with that is that you you have to do a lot of iteration to be able to get to the point where you say, okay, this is the type of learner I
yeah,
am, and this is how I'm going to learn from now on. With AI, with agents, with agentic AI, whatever it is, now learners are able to have the ability to be able to craft personalized
yeah,
tutors for themselves, right? They're able to understand. So basically, you could give a prompt and say, "I'm yet to identify how best I can
yeah,
learn." Right? Could you come up with certain levels of problems or certain types of problems, and I'll answer them, and then you evaluate it and tell me how best I learn from these things.
yeah,
Right? From this, craft out a like a learning guide for me based on your inferences or
yeah,
whatever. Right? This means that now children are able to identify themselves quicker, how best they learn quickly, but then also they're able to harness that to their advantage and learn more,
yeah,
right? So it means we don't put pressure on teachers to try to say, um I need to attend to A, B, C, D in the class.
Yeah,
Imagine you have like 50 students in a class, right? How are you going to be able to do this, right? So it means it gives more leeway for teachers to be creative in the classroom and say, oh, I can let me try and find like different problems that these students can be able to like tackle, right? And I think that's how we should be looking at it, right? And this in terms of even testing, how tests are being
yeah,
administered, and what have you, right? We need to reimagine all of these things as we move.
yeah. For the testing part is really true, but for the learning part, I had a sort of a question on the opposite end of the stream. Because what you've described is ways in which students can use this to improve their learning, right?
Mhm.
And this is a two-part question in terms of whether they actually learn, or is it that we now need to change what we think about learning? Because, for instance, if I'm a student and I'm in class and I know that I don't have to produce the answers myself or go and spend long hours researching on it, I could simply ask ChatGPT to give me the answers. Why would I still listen in class? Right? Like the value of the in class experience gradually diminishes because it is not what gives me the ultimate learning experience anymore. It's the other way around. So you'd start
Yeah.
having experiences where, and students are like that. Anytime an experience is no more valuable to them, they start being distracting, they do not pay attention, they disturb other people in the class, they are more stubborn, and that might ruin that experience. But also, I understand that the second part of this question is more like we for a long time associated quality learning with effort, that you have to put in a certain level of effort for you to feel that you've learned, right? Like you sit down, cram for 2 hours,
Yeah.
and then you go and sit in the exam. So, bam, yes, I'm that good. Actually, I spent last night cramming the thing. I came to do it, and it's like now there's entirely reduced effort to access the learning experience. So, is it that it would be too harsh to judge that students don't have to pay attention entirely in class to be good students? Or does it still fall under what you are saying that now then it poses a different challenge? We should redesign the learning experience to not be about just receiving and reproducing information, but more things that AI cannot replicate for them now.
Yeah, I think if we are to go with education how it is now, then we are going to have that
Yeah,
problem. We are going to have a problem where students just come to class and go home and then just put the assignments in ChatGPT, get the assignments, bring it
yeah,
back. Like if that's what we are going to do, because learning in itself right now is or previously is has never been actually
yeah,
interactive. It has never been an interactive experience,
true.
right? You come to class, sit down, absorb, and then go back, and then try to recall what you've learned,
Yeah,
and then that's it, right? But imagine a world where we have like a classroom, have like oral exams, so you
yeah,
don't have to write. You come and then defend what exactly you've learned, or it's an interactive classroom session, the project classroom session. All of those things. It means students are have no other
yeah,
option than to participate in class, right? They could go home and then use the AI tutors to help them understand whatever they did in class. But then that is a better approach. But if we decide to go with what we are doing now, then kids are just going to keep on cheating. I mean, is it cheating? I wouldn't term it as cheating, right? Because we say you could use Google, right?
yeah,
If kids can use Google, it's Google but in a different
yeah. So,
way.
I mean, I had a final question that's related to this, which is like
Okay.
if an AI can write my essay and prepare my presentation, how do I know what I truly know and what I don't know, right? And what counts as my achievement in this instance? Because it's more like, bro, 90% of the work was done using prompts. So does this
Mhm.
presentation really belong to me? Is it really a reflection of what I know about this issue?
So I like the fact that you mentioned
Yeah,
prompts, right? Because like two people could prompt a chat bot and then get like on trying to achieve the same
yeah,
goal but get totally
yeah. Prompt
different
engineering
answers,
obviously
right?
makes a big difference.
Exactly. So if if the question is on how do we know what you actually
Yeah.
know, then that's on you, right? That's on what you want to learn. I don't think you have to blame your AI tutor or your
Yeah.
chatbots for that, right? You have to be honest with yourself. So if you are going in there trying to understand calculus, right,
Yeah.
and you know nothing about calculus, by just give it a question and say, "Hey, answer this for me," then it gives you the answers and you read through it and you're like, "Oh yeah, I got it." Then go, you get like a similar question
Yeah.
and you don't know how to answer it. You haven't really learned because you weren't honest with
Yeah.
yourself, right? So I think the how you ask the question is very very
Yeah.
different because someone might go and say, "Hey, ChatGPT, like, give me this
Yeah.
answer," right? Someone might go, "I'm now starting calculus. I have no idea
Yeah.
how to go about this. Could you please guide me step by step? Problems, what?" And you get different
Yeah.
solutions. So for that, don't blame the tool, blame the person, because you could give a hammer to someone and to two different people.
One will hit the
Someone will come up with a
tail.
chair
Yeah.
and someone will destroy a table.
Fair enough. Really, 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 really good answer there. I think again, like recently, I made a post on LinkedIn just 2 days ago when I was talking about I had a conversation with Eric, and we are talking about like in the world of AI, probably the most important thing is like character and you as a person being a lot more responsible for yourself, because it's never been easier to execute tasks, right? Like it's been this is the easiest we've come in human history to get a lot of things done. Maybe not pouring concrete, but doing a lot of the things that we do. This is the easiest we've come so far. And so it's more like you just need to be a lot more responsible. And like you're saying, your assessment of yourself has to be honest in those instances in
Yeah.
order to still push forward. Okay, let's go to the third section, which is a lot more controversial for most people, but it's about relationships and connection, right? For a lot of us, connection is what makes us feel human. Yet today, a lot of people are stuck on algorithms powered by AI, learning who they are, what they prefer, entrapping them in doom scrolling, doubling down on lonely moments. And people then eventually decide, or at least there is a rise of the number of people deciding to resort to AI companions in those lonely moments. People tell bots, I love you, because they never judge. Like Sherry Tucker, who is an American sociologist, said, we risk second class sense of connection when we turn to chatbots instead of real people. So, the first question I ask is, what happens to friendships when our closest confidant becomes a machine? And this is not even some far fetched thing. I've seen people on their statuses putting conversations they've had with ChatGPT about their relationship life, about themselves, seeking validation from ChatGPT, requesting for insights on how they've managed some decisions. And because it doesn't judge, right? Like even if you're doing something
Yeah.
stupid, it won't tell you that you are being stupid. It would sugarcoat it for you. And people get caught up in it.
Yeah.
So are we are we really losing out on what happens in true human connections when we sort of resort to AI for some of these experiences?
I think this is a very, very this question should be like to like a sociologist or something, right? because
No, but I mean,
because for
the
me,
reason
right?
why I'm asking this is also that from a tech perspective, it's whether or not the chatbots can actually replicate human connection to a much more
Uh,
quality extent.
I think if it's a matter of
Yeah,
replication, right? I think they can, right? Because a lot of things that we see, right, are all out there. You go to TikTok, you have a dozen relationship advices. You have it on YouTube. You have blogs that blog about
correct.
relationships. You have blogs that blog about all of these things, right? And that's what is being fed into
Yeah,
AI. And that's what is being fed into these large language models. So as for replication, I think it can 100% be done, right? The problem now is, and for me, it always goes back to how things have traditionally been
yeah,
done, right? And I don't know, but for some weird reason, the world has gone to a point where people have started viewing relationships as very
yeah,
transactional, right? So if I want to talk to a friend about a problem I'm having, right? In my mind, I begin to like play out like things that might become transactional with that person,
Yeah.
right? And so I'd rather not, right? So I'll decide to go to a faceless being and type out my problems and ask for solutions, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that being is also using your problems to solve some other person's problems because they might be stealing your data. They might, and you don't know.
Yeah.
But then it goes back to the devil you know is better than the angel you don't know problem, right? So 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 as for replication, I think they can 100% replicate it. And I think with reasoning models coming out now, they don't just replicate, they don't just churn out um so, answers,
Yeah.
right? They also reason through the answers. They also think through the answers they are giving to people, right? So then it means we might probably get to a point where people would begin to view friendships as not necessary, and that's not something new,
Yeah.
because when at the advent of like video games,
Yeah.
right? We saw people that were just
Stuck with their
clamped in
games.
their rooms
Yeah.
and stuck with their games. And I mean, they led to very dark, some have led to very dark consequences,
Yeah.
right? That we are still trying to
Yeah.
solve, right? And so that alone should tell you that there is a problem there. There's a very big problem over there. I remember watching like this. I think it was a series. I think Rookies. Like it was a series, and like kids were chatting with like a chat bot, and then the chat bot told them to like off their friend, right? And
Oh,
they and then you get it, and it was like a series. But then looking at it from my I was like,
what
looking at it, I was
happened?
like, this is something that
Yeah.
that could happen, right? Because it feeds off the vibe you give it,
Yeah.
right? If you tell ChatGPT, hey, I need you to act like this,
Would act
right?
like that.
It will act
Yeah.
like that, right? And so it might reinforce your own personal narratives. It might constantly create things that it wants you to that will make you want to come back to it
Yeah.
more. And this might go both at both ends of very, very different
Yeah.
spectrums. And this might also yield problems. So I think it still boils back to it will boil back to the idea of how best we are going to be able to safeguard these things. Our systems in place to be able to safeguard the development of all these
Yeah.
things.
For me, usually when I think of, and it was again, I'm coming back to not this generation, the generation 2, 3, 5 years ahead. And I always think of how it would feel like when they get born into the world and how would they experience the world. Because when we were coming up, the Walkman, hey, but I'm old. The Walkman. People having Walkman, Walkman with like a long earpiece. That was their
Yeah.
distraction from the world's troubles, and they didn't want to resort to friends, so they resorted to music
Hmm.
and having their own playlist and just walking around and listening to those songs. And then came video games and the advent of the internet and social media and movies and all that, which meant that they could still now have a very social experience that is distracting without having to engage people. The reason why AI is, in my view, the most dangerous of all these inventions of distraction is that it's the only one that can actually give you a response to specific problems. You can be
Yeah.
depressed and go play music. The music didn't give you an answer to your specific depressing situation. And so ultimately, I think at some point, people still get forced back to human interaction to try and figure it out because that's the only way to get
Hmm.
very specific help or very specific assistance. Now, for those coming up, they know that they don't need a human therapist. They know that they don't need a human friend to give them some advice on something. And it would become super normal in their world. Because now maybe it feels a little bit awkward for me to go to ChatGPT and say, you know what, this is what I've been really struggling with. Can you help me? Because it's distinctively different from how I was brought up. Like when I was coming up, you don't go to bots and machines for advice. You go to humans, right? And so it feels very awkward in my socialization. And I think that's the only thing restricting me from getting into it because it feels awkward. So I'm imagining for people who are now going to be born who find it absolutely normal as part of their socialization to get to use that, whether we would not see the peak of human isolation with this next generation that's likely to come up.
So I think for the next generation coming up,
Yeah.
right? If they had to enter a world where that has become the norm, then that would probably be everybody existing and then nobody really caring about
yeah,
themselves and doing whatever they want to do, right? But I think largely these things have existed even now, like the whole trying to, because we have to understand that like these things don't come because people are afraid to talk to other
yeah,
people, right? It's because people are afraid people might judge them for
yeah,
whatever they have to say. So even in Ghana, right, you have these radio shows where people send their problems
exactly,
anonymously, right, and then they get
yeah,
solutions, right, or these YouTube videos where people like try to help
yeah.
people, right. So now it's kind of like we are removing the whole logistic of trying to write a letter, send it to a radio station, them having to read my
Now the
problem
radio
on
is in
air,
your pocket.
to now. Yes, exactly. Right. So these are things that we've just built on as a society. So now people are like, let me just remove the radio
Yeah,
station bits from it and then go straight to ChatGPT. Same thing with like influencers, social media
yeah,
now, right? People see a lot of like people on like influencers as like people they listen to, people they take advices from. But then there are people they can't interact with on the daily.
yeah,
Right. So what probably is the next best thing they can approximate to,
yeah,
right? That influences. These are like AI chatbots that you get responses from. Snapchat has like an AI
yeah,
chatbot, and it basically views you as their friend,
yeah,
right? And these are things that people have just been socialized to do
yeah.
now. Just that coming generations would probably, if it's supposed to continue on that tangent, will probably just take it to the extreme and be like, I mean, what's the point of having a friend if I could stay at home? Especially with AI agents now,
Yeah.
right? Take video gaming, like live video gaming, like live stream video gaming, like playing with people online and whatever. We could probably get to a point where a single person is playing with like five agents
It
in a
happens
chat
now.
room and it's
Like
to
I play what do you call it? PS Pro for I think PS football or
yeah.
something on my iPhone. I've forgotten the actual
Mhm.
game name. And now there are features or there are options where you could go into a chat room or a game room and
Mhm.
collaborate with like seven different AIs. And you are just like two or three of the players on the pitch. So now you're not playing controlling the entire 11. You are controlling the rest of
Yeah.
your people are also and you have to collaborate with them instead of humans.
Yeah.
I'm like, and
Yeah.
it's a lot more easier because now I don't want to play alone, but I also don't feel
Mhm.
like I could go to Kwame and go and say, "Bro, do you have time? Can you hop on and let's play?"
Yeah.
And I can just ignore him and still play with bots if
Mhm.
I want to play
Yeah.
with people.
So that's like a problem. Like that's in itself is now a problem. But the thing is, I feel like the market is now being driven by like money, 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 money. How best are we going to be able to get money? How best are we going to get
Yeah,
users? All of those things. So they are just going right because we have to understand that these people are not going to regulate
you know they
themselves.
would.
I mean, some of them, I think, yeah, I think maybe Anthropic. I think Anthropic is doing lots like trying to regulate
Yeah,
its itself. But I feel like a lot of the companies, even like the companies that build products around
yeah,
AI, right? They want to be able to get as much users as possible.
yeah,
So there's no incentive literally for them to try to get people. If my market is in video games and getting people to play more on my
yeah.
platform, right? I'm not going to try to tell you go and touch
Which is
grass.
true.
Right, that's I don't care if you touch grass or
Yeah,
not. I want you to sit and
yeah,
play games, right? And that's how we also have to look at it, right? But if we are moving towards that tangent, it's very very dangerous,
yeah.
right? Because then it means basically people not viewing life in itself as anything, like other human life in itself as something that is important, right? They might only necessarily just look inward.
That's so true. It's good you bring up regulation because the final part will be about power and regulation itself. So we'll come there in a bit. But I had I had a contribution to this, and then my final question on this relationship bit, which
Okay.
is more like I'm a bit worried that, like you said, maybe there are these avenues of engaging people anonymously and engaging systems anonymously through radio shows and all that. But I think it becomes significantly worse when it is no more engaging an external person. I would be very like there are a lot of people who are still very adverse to calling a radio station or texting a radio station or telling them my problem and then if somebody infers it or even if they don't infer it, Charlie. It's just the fact that I'm going to tell some random person and those people could still say something. There's still this barrier of I don't like it because it's public
Yeah,
or because it's external to myself and I can't control the outcomes. Versus now, it's me and my small mobile phone with a chatbot that enters my pocket. Nobody knows. Nobody has to know unless I go and take a screenshot and put it on my status. So there's
yeah,
more access and more freedom. And again, like you said, people are trying to avoid judgment. It takes away that element entirely as well because the bots would never judge you. they would, they would, unless you specifically put in a prompt and say like roast me or judge me or taunt me
yeah,
or which you won't do within that situation. So I think it's opening up a very wide landscape and creating an access points for people who wouldn't have wanted to do this in the traditional means that exist. But I have one big question for you, and it's whether or not AI can make us happier people. That's the question. That's it. Can AI make us
what to
happier
make you
people?
happy? So, the question on happiness,
Yeah,
right? People ask, does money make you happy?
yeah.
Right? Does relationships make you happy? Do relationships make you happy? Now, can AI make you happy? It all boils down to the fact that what makes you happy,
Why are you
right?
starting shading people who ask the question even before you answer the question?
I mean, that's basically the question,
Yeah,
right? What is going to make you happy? For some people, happiness is a world where we are all living in the 80s and we are all riding carriages and we are all singing Kumbaya or something on a farm somewhere, right?
horses and
For some,
the rest.
yeah, that's what makes some people happy, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, for certain people, right, what makes them happy has not yet been developed or is now being developed, right?
Hey, those people,
And
how are they
if
surviving?
so, for some
Yeah,
people, AI makes them happy and it's being developed, right? It makes my work easier. I'm happy. It gives me a new person to talk to and try to find
yeah,
solutions from. It makes me happy. It gives me someone to bounce ideas off of. It makes me happy, right? The question is, how do we how do we quantify that happiness? Because some people derive happiness from like the person. Like if someone gives me, or if someone is my source of
yeah,
happiness, the person can equally find joy in that. So once we have that mutual form of happiness, then I'm good, right? But then maybe AI doesn't have that consciousness to say, there's no consciousness behind AI to say it knows I am happy.
yeah.
So but I feel like people that use AI don't care if AI know that they are happy or not,
Yeah,
right? They
they
just
want to
want
be
to get
happy.
that
Yeah,
feeling. Yeah, they want to be happy, right? And I think it can make certain people happy. Just that it might necessarily mean like their social lives might be disrupted if they are counting on it for like relationships and whatnot, right? But then again, if they don't want to be able to involve themselves with other people like socially, then there might necessarily be a problem in there somewhere that is not entirely AI's fault, right? So I think that's how we have to look at it, because there's no objective true path to happiness, right? I don't think there's an objective true path to happiness. I think there's multiple paths to happiness, right? Thankfully, people now have AI
one of them.
as a form of reaching that
Yeah.
happiness that they didn't have in the past, right?
So I guess your answer is the more the merrier, since it adds to the
Yeah, I mean,
then
yeah,
it's good.
yeah,
Okay. Finally, let's talk about power and like as you
yeah,
put it, regulations because AI isn't just personal, right? It's geopolitical. Google calls this the Gemini era of search, and AI is doing like thinking on a global stage because we sit in our rooms and think that we are the only ones using AI. Like now, the guilt around AI use is gone. There's active encouragement of people to learn how to use it, and it's even like a requirement. It would be insane for you to go and sit in any interview anywhere now, whether for school, work, whatever, and tell them, "No, I don't use AI because I want to be myself." Are you okay? They would literally have a very adverse reaction to you. So like AI is influencing our thinking on a global space, right? And the question then is, who writes the code? Who holds the levers of determining what this does and what it doesn't do? And all major investors or some major investors are saying like we should safeguard AI against misinformation and regulate it early. Also for them, I think it's mainly because they don't want to invest heavily, and later on you come back and tell them, nah, this investment is bad because you've done something that's not like so. Like they're doing TikTok. TikTok buys servers, keeps them, whatever, and then you come back and say, nah, 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 leave those ones. We want you to relocate all your servers and bring them somewhere else. They're trying to avoid that wasted expenditure. And the first question I have is, how do we ensure that AI aligns with people and not profits? Because, like you rightly said, for the companies, their entire goal is money because they are being driven by money to pursue money. So, how do we
Mhm.
create a regulatory framework and who should be seriously pursuing this? Because now it seems like everybody's enjoying the AI revolution, but nobody's regulating it.
So I feel like one field of science that people have necessarily like neglected in the whole AI thing is the social
Yeah,
sciences, right? And I feel like that's the best like that's the best way we could try to regulate
yeah,
AI without being too technical,
okay,
right? Because if we want to boil down to the technicalities, it's mostly going to boil on like
yeah,
privacy and whatnot. It's not necessarily going to boil down to like the human aspects,
yeah,
right? Because if we are being honest, a lot of like technical stuff don't necessarily mingle with like the human aspect or the social
yeah,
aspect, right? So I feel like a lot more research has to be done in like things like responsible AI, ethical
yeah,
AI, right? How should we be able to use these things to the benefit of humanity, right? But then also I think like governments need to also be actively involved, right? Not necessarily governments creating their own AIs,
yeah,
but governments being like up to date on information, right? On what each model is doing and how these things are affecting their citizenry,
yeah,
right? Because I feel like it would be like a very big disservice if Ghana's president knows nothing about like the advancement of AI in the world. Like I feel like it would be a very, very big disservice to the nation as a whole, right? Or Ghana's parliamentarians know nothing about it because these are the people that are supposed because these are the people that are supposed to be crafting laws
Why are you shading
to
them?
regulate these things.
Knowing very well
Oh, I'm not
that
shading now. I'm
why are
just
you
saying
shading them?
I'm actually not shading them, right? I feel like I think some of them are abreast with these things,
Yeah,
right? But I feel
some of
like
them,
more of them
there
need
are
to.
legitimately a significant number of them who might. Yeah, I'm sure they've heard the word AI. They probably know it,
Mhm.
but they are adverse to it, and usually that's the problem. They
Yeah.
don't embrace it. They frown on it. They clamp down on it and
Mhm.
claim that it's children just getting an escape route.
I think so. I think they should take a more EU like approach. You know how the EU is active in like tech
Yeah,
advancement and whatever, right? So I think that's what a lot of these like governments should look at, right? Not over-regulate, but at least try to regulate to a point where, well, like these companies have a fixed framework
yeah,
to build. Because I think I was watching a YouTube video, and I think one of the problems they cited was a lot of these is something that is new, is a new frontier, right? A lot of these um groups, right, don't know what's from what, right?
yeah,
They just test out and see, I think we shouldn't do this,
yeah.
and then like they
Yeah,
fall back. There's no actual framework by which
framework.
like how you have like an IEEE standard for like wireless communication. There's no standard, there's no framework by which they are following to build, right? So I think research into like the social aspect, like responsible AI, ethical AI, governments taking like an active like step into like trying to form like a framework, especially like the developed governments, right?
Yeah,
But then developing worlds necessarily should also try to contribute something to the research, like, and this is like the government in particular, to try to contribute something to the research, because whether you like it or not, their citizenry are going to engage with these things, right? So they need to be able to understand it and at least try to push for more research within their spaces,
yeah,
right? To be able to maybe basically be at, I don't think be at par, but like at certain level with the rest of the
Yeah.
world.
One final question before we wrap up this episode is I've recently noticed countries doing two things: very heavy
Mhm.
investment in AI integration into their national education systems, and also changing education regulations to mandate the introduction of AI into every single classroom. So, for instance, China has done it nationwide, Saudi Arabia is doing it, I think Qatar as well. And I'm wondering, should that be the approach where states do not, I mean, beyond the regulatory framework, they also sort of to make sure that everybody is ready for the future that is approaching, have a much more mandatory and structured introduction of AI into education. Because I have a feeling allowing the room for teachers and schools to determine this on their own is either empowering some people and disempowering some people. And so the regulation from this perspective shouldn't just be about what AI companies come up with, but also how AI is used in the major areas of the development of the country.
I think largely it should basically be a holistic approach for
Yeah.
me, right? So not just classroom wise. I think it should be all
Where?
across. Because I think even with the DeepSeek episode,
Yeah.
I think even with the DeepSeek episode, I touched on how like like
Yeah.
efficiency, right, in a lot of like bureaucratic processes that exist within government, right. The only thing is I think data privacy and stuff like things like that. Right. But I think forming or building around these things to address specific problems like organic problems within your state is much better than winging it, right, or much better than waiting for the gods to bless you and see if your problem might be solved or not, right. And
Yeah.
so I think they should take an active approach into like inculcating it in every aspect, because the truth is the world is going, right? The world is moving, right? Every aspect of the world is moving. Whether schools, healthcare, infrastructure, it's moving. You have to find your place in that train and then make a mark in that train, right? For developing countries again, for you to be able to for you to be able to reach those heights, you have to take advantage of every tool available to you to cut down cost, to efficiently allocate resources, and what have you, to be able to try to catch up,
Yeah.
right, or try to put your citizens on a much better front. Because imagine a world where if Ghana's if I like using Ghana as an example, but imagine a
In
world where
Ghana, so you know, continue.
I'm a guy. So imagine a world where Ghana's governmental systems, right,
Yeah.
are AI driven, right? That even that will even mean that like a lot of the citizenry are trained
Yeah.
in this, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we are getting this from somewhere else. It means a lot of people are actively
They have
like
to learn to
um
engage with it.
it's exactly,
Yeah.
right, and that's what I think should we should be driving, right, but of course in a framework that is responsible enough for everybody to be able to engage in.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode, Brain Charlie. This
Thanks.
it's been a really good episode as well because there's a lot of conversations happening out there around AI. And the framework for this episode was to try and think of it from a very practical point of how it plays out in everyday lives. And so it's been a really nice conversation to have. For those listening to this episode, we've asked the most important questions we came up with, whether AI is taking our purpose, our identity, our empathy, happiness, think of everything that you can come up with. And ultimately, there are no simple answers. There are no simple and single answers. there, there are a lot of complications around it, and we've shared our thoughts on it. So definitely let us know what you think as well in the comment section. Share your thoughts on some of these things regarding purpose, relationships, finding validations as well. And as always, see you on the next episode. Thanks, everyone.